Brothers and sisters, good afternoon to you. Happy Sabbath. How is everybody doing? All right? All right. The federal government is shut down, but heaven is still open for business. Even on the Sabbath, heaven is open 24/7. What a wonderful God we serve. What about if one of these days you're to pray and God say, guess what? We're gonna go slow. You're being what, furloughed? Huh? Where would you turn? But praise be to God. God is always working. Yes, he's always working. What a God. But my dear brothers and sisters, those of you who are employed to the federal government, I just want to say, continue to trust the Lord. It is in the most difficult of circumstances when the Lord works best. God works best in the most difficult of circumstances. And I said to my wife, I assure her, don't worry, just trust the Lord. As a matter of fact, it's interesting to note that Thursday, we used Thursday to do some missionary work. We went to Silver Spring to assist this elderly person. We went and we did a wonderful job for her, and she was so pleased. Yes, man. So rather than sitting down worrying about whether the government going to be reopened, and we just went out and did some work for the Lord. And so we'll leave the rest in the Lord's hand, and certainly the Lord will see us through. He has not brought us this far to leave us. He will see us through, brothers and sisters. Okay, good. So is there a word from the Lord? The answer is always yes. Yes, my nephew, Brother Josh, there has never been a time that there has not been a word from the Lord. But there have been many, many times when the Lord speaks that we refuse to listen. And as a result of that, we end up suffering the inevitable consequences. I trust today that as the Lord is about getting ready to speak, that we'll now turn up our vessels in our saucers, because we're going to be drinking today from our saucers. And just in case you might ask, why not from the cup, but from the saucers? Why from the saucer? Because there's going to be an overflow. And when the cup is overflowing, you have got to drink from the saucer, not from the cup, because it's going to spill over and spill on you. So you drink from the saucer. God is going to bless us today abundantly. Do you believe that? All right, so I now invite us now to turn up our vessels in anticipation for the reception of the blessing. What a God. Yes. So I have captioned my little talk to us today. The time is now. When is the time? The time is now. Yes, the time is now. Wonderful indeed. Now, we're going to spend most of our time in the book of 1 Kings. As was read from chapter 18. Yes, we would have looked at verses 13 through 22, but we can take time out to read more chapters. It's a very powerful story. Now, what is it that was happening in Israel during this time? For 3.5 years, Israel was experiencing drought. Animals and crops were both alike dying because there was no water. For 3.5 years, it was drought, physical drought. But as bad as that was, there was another drought that they were experiencing simultaneously. And the second drought that Israel was experiencing was worse than the physical drought. Because Israel had found itself, spiritually speaking, at an all-time low. And so during this time, for the 3.5 years, there's a prophet of God, a very powerful prophet, a man known as Elijah. Don't mix up Elijah with the Elisha. But they were two powerful guys. We're talking about the Jah and not the Shah. So Elijah, by this time, God had sent him over to a place called Zidonian. And God sent him to stay with a widow lady for 3.5 years. You remember the story? That when Elijah went, God said, Elijah, in fact, before the drought started, Elijah was at Sherrit, the brook Sherrit, and the raven would bring him breakfast in the morning, Sister Anne-Marie, and dinner in the evening. And he did not have any carrot juice nor soursop to drink. But right there, the river was there, the brook. But it came to the time when the brook dried up, and God did not abandon his servant. I'm just giving a background to where I'm going. God said, Elijah, I have not abandoned you now. You are being taken care of. Now, you are going to travel 40 miles in the strength of that last meal that the raven gave him. He traveled 40 miles. And God said, you're going to go to Zidonia, and I have provided already, just like the story that Brother Anderson told. Before the lady started to pray, they would have left if the distance was 12 miles. They would have to leave in order to arrive when the prayer was going on. They would have left long time. So before Elijah asked God, how am I going to be taken care of? God said, don't worry. Leave the word to me. And when he reached the gate, there it was, not by coincidence, friends, but God, in his divine providence, allowed it thus. The lady was there gathering sticks. And Elijah knew the lady because in those days, widow dressed a particular way, Brother Francis. So Elijah did not have to ask whether or not this was the lady for whom God has provided for him. And he went up to her. Of course, being a child of God, must have greeted her, whether morning or evening or noon. Good afternoon. How are you doing today? And he said, please, I am just coming off 40 miles journey. I'm thirsty. Would you be so kind to fetch me a little water? And the lady turned to fetch the water. But as she turned, Elijah said something to her, and she had to turn back. She turned to go and get the water. She didn't have a lot, but she thinks she could give him, spare him a glass of water. But as she turned to go and fetch it, Elijah said, by the way, when you're coming back with the water, please bring me a morsel of bread. I am both thirsty and I'm hungry. I would prefer to get the water, but if you can spare the bread, bring it as well. At this time, the lady turned back to face Elijah and said, well, listen, as for the water, you can get that. But as for the morsel of bread, let me say something. All I have left, whether in the pantry or in the cupboard or in the kitchen, is just a little bit of meal in the bottom of the barrel and a little bit of cooking oil or olive oil in the bottom of the bottle. It is barely sufficient for me and my one child, let alone to add one more mouth. Elijah said to her, go and bring me my portion first. Now, that sounds a little presumptuous, doesn't it? And it could also be a little intimidating too. How dare you not want to give me what I want? But don't look at it like that. Look at it from a faith perspective. Elijah was who? Elijah was God's servant. The portion that the lady would normally give if Jesus had come and asked her for it, that is the portion you're now going to give to the man of God. Let's call it her 1/10, if you please. And Elijah said to her, don't worry. What you have will not be finished until after 3.5 years. That's powerful. And she went and she came back with both the water and the mass of bread. But there's something in this story that I'm sure we're not picking up. There's something in this story that I'm sure we're not picking up. Thank you. Good. Beautiful. Oil. So when the lady came out, Elijah said, listen, the little bit of oil will not be finished. The little bit of meal will not be finished until after 3.5 years. But listen to the crux of the story now, Sister Stacy. For the 3.5 years, at known time, did the barrel become full. At known time. At known time, Sister Anne-Marie, did the oil bottle become full? Is always remain, this about 2 ounces? Call it 2 ounces. And each, now, how many times would she have poured out for 3.5 years? Quite a number of times. 360 days in the Jewish calendar, times 3.5, that's a whole lot of time. And if she cooks 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe supper, is a whole lot of throwing. And it has never gone below 2 ounces. And has never risen above 2 ounces. The more she threw, the more it remained. God kept her son, and his servant Elijah for 3.5 years. That's the God we serve. So, the drought was about to break. Physically. The spiritual drought was about to break as well. Now, Israel, by the way, this man on the throne was a very wicked king. His name was Ahab. One of the most evil kings who ever reigned in Israel. Ahab. And if that was not bad enough, he went and he married a woman known as Jezebel. And doubly, they were wicked. If Ahab was not wicked, Jezebel was super wicked. And they went about killing out God's servants out of the land. So what they were stamping out godliness out of the land. And where there's no godliness, they must be taken over. Evil will take the place. And so it got so bad that Elijah challenged God. He said to God, God, are you still up there? I don't think so. Don't you see what is happening to your people? Don't you see what Ahab and wicked Jezebel are doing to your people? They are killing your prophets. As a matter of fact, it got so bad that Elijah requested of God that he take his life because he thought he was the only godly person left. So he requested that God put him to sleep. God said, no, Elijah, you are not alone. There are 7,000 prophets in Israel that have not bowed their knee to Baal. So you're not alone. You're not alone in this. You might not be aware of them, but they are there. So Elijah challenged God. Elijah said, God, if you're not going to act on behalf of your people, then I can understand because they have turned their back against you. But you know something? Nevertheless, act for the sake of your glory. Because your name and your good character is being dragged into the ground. What did God say to Elijah? Why don't you do something about it? And immediately, Elijah got, the power and the authority. And he ran into the palace. Didn't make an appointment with the king. The king did not want to see him. If the king would have killed him. He ran past the guard. What they call him again, those who guard the president? Secret Service. He ran past the Secret Service. And before they could say, who are you? Where are you going? He was out of their sight. And he went straight into the king. And his message was short but precise. Didn't do any formal greeting or anything like that. He said, for the next 2.5 years, there shall be neither rain nor dew, except at my word. So guess what now? What we have just read in chapter 18 now, the drought was about coming to an end. The drought was about coming to an end. So Elijah, who had gone to stay with this widow woman, Sister Pat, has now returned. Because the 3.5 years was now coming to an end, Sister Anderson. And so Elijah met this fellow here known as Obadiah, who was a trusted servant of this wicked king and queen. He said, because what happened now, Ahab and Obadiah went out to search for water for the animals. So they divide themselves into, Ahab said, you go that way and I will go this way. Because we can't afford to have any more of the animals dying. Let's see if we can find some water. There must be some place, some oasis where we can get some water. So God put Elijah in the way where Obadiah went. And as Obadiah went, Elijah went. And they came in the path of each other. And Elijah said, hey man, please go and tell your servant Ahab, that Elijah is here. Obadiah said, man, are you out of your mind? You must be crazy. What have I done why you hate me so much? You're sending me on a suicide mission. Why? There is no country left on the face of the earth that Ahab has not sent to find you, to hunt you down. And you don't want me to go? And when he comes to find you, he doesn't find you. He kills me because I think I'm taking joke of him. But Elijah said, oh no, I'm not into any joke. This is serious business. You go and tell him that Elijah is here. And he went. And Ahab came. And when Ahab came, he saw Elijah. Listen to what he said to Elijah. He said, is it you who trouble Israel? Verse 17, art thou he that troubled Israel? But the truth be told, Elijah had not troubled Israel. Ahab and his wicked wife, Jezebel, had troubled Israel. And God was about getting ready to fix the problem. So Elijah said, all right, you know what? Summon your prophets and let them meet me on Mount Carmel. There was going to be the great showdown on top of Mount Carmel, brothers and sisters. And 850 prophets met Elijah up there. 850 prophets. Elijah got 2 animals. He said, you go first, I will go last. They were there from morning to afternoon calling upon their God, Baal. And there was no answer. See, they started to cut themselves and the blood started gushing out. And Elijah started to mock them. He said, he must be sleeping. He must have gone on a long journey. Wake him up. He's a king. He's a God. Elijah said, you know what? Enough of this nonsense. You repair the altar, because you cannot sacrifice to the true God and Baal altar. You have got to give God his own altar. And he reconstructed the altar. And he packed the wood and the sacrifice on it. And Elijah said to the people, the God who answers by fire, he is the God. We're going to worship him. And in totality, 12 buckets of water were provided. And they wet the altar, they wet the altar, they wet the altar. Until the trenches around start to become full up with the water. And Elijah said, all right, come near to me now. Gather near. One man against the world. But he wasn't afraid. You might want to say, then Brother Salmon, wasn't he afraid? With 850 false prophets? No, he was not afraid. Because when God sends us, brothers and sisters, on a mission, he protects us. God will not put us in the path for which he has not provided for. Let me repeat that. God will not put us in the path for which he has not provided for, or for which he has not made any provision. Once God sends us on a mission, already God has worked it out for us. We can trust him. We can share experiences, I'm sure. So Elijah was not afraid. Because I've come to understand that the success of God's war does not depend on numbers. You didn't get that? Because you'd have said amen. The success of God's war does not depend on numbers. Gideon's story is a classic example. You can read it in Judges chapter 7. Only 300 men out of 32,000. God sent by the rest home. And God tested them. And those who lap like a dog, those were the ones. And they were up against the Midianites and the Amalekites. The Bible says that their camels were without number. You don't want anything more than that. And 300 men put them to flight. You know what it reminds me of? What does that remind us of? Those of us from the island of Jamaica, as a little boy growing up, you are sent to the grocery shop in the community grocery shop. We're not talking about supermarket now, like Walmart and Aldi's. No, the little grocery shop along the roadside. The little man who operates it, maybe sometimes he can only buy 50 pounds of flour, a dozen cans of milk. That's all he could afford. He buys it Monday, by Wednesday it's finished. He has to go back to the wholesale to buy more. But that was a little community shop that we go to get our bread, our sugar, our cornmeal. You know what I'm talking about. So the little boy growing up, Sister Anderson, Mass Israel, and Sister Beck. You know what I'm talking about. Operate a local shop. It was the nearest shop to where I was living. And so you're told to go and buy flour for dinner. Dinner time was coming on. Go to the shop, buy 2 pounds of flour, and ask the shopkeeper to put a little bit of cornmeal in there. Mix it. You know about the pot. And sometimes when they come home and they pour the flour into the pot, ready to knead the flour now, they say, have you forgotten to ask the shopkeeper to tip the meal? I say, it's in there. But I'm not seeing it. Why? It is lost in the flour. Because it is so small. It is lost in the flour. It's there. Gideon's army was the little cornmeal that was lost in the large army. But at the end of the day, what came out? It was the cornmeal that came out. That's how our God works. So it is not number that decides, that determines the success of God's war. But as we studied this morning about Joshua, when Joshua depends upon God, God will go before and fight the battle for Israel. I don't know about you, but I can tell you, I can share many, many experiences with you. As a police in Jamaica, I have faced many, many battles. But I've come to understand that when you trust God, He will defend you. I will never forget one day a young man caught me. Well, of course, I wasn't the police when he caught me. He caught me on my ears. And coming from school, it bled and the blood stained my khaki uniform. And it so happened that I joined the police 4 years after that. And it so happened that I was now stationed at Mandeville Police Station. So one evening I went to work. And I saw in the cell, the holding area where we keep inmates, I saw this gentleman at the grill. And I said, no, my eyes are fooling me. This can't be the guy that cut me years ago. But certainly it was he. But you know something? I said, no. It was a perfectly good time to give him more than what he did to me. In fact, I did not even have to touch him. Just ask other prisoners to beat him for me. But I didn't do that. Because as a Christian, you must learn to forgive. But the long and short of the story is that young man had become my friend. And it has reached a point where when I see him, I didn't even remember that he caught me. Because the last station I worked before I took early retirement was Spalding Police Station. And he was living just below the police station. He had to pass morning going to work and even going back home. And many times he called to me, Mr. Salmon, everything good? I said, yes, Lambert, everything is all right. No problem. He has become my friend. Leave the battle to the Lord. He will take care of it for you. You don't have to fight. So when the people of Israel went upon Mount Carmel, Elijah called upon the God of Israel. And the God of Israel answered by fire. And fire came down and burnt up the altar with the sacrifice and dried up the water. And when the people saw the powerful miracle of God in their very eyes, Elijah said, how long halt ye between two opinions? You have seen the demonstration of God. Baal could not do anything. You have seen what the God of our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has done. Why halt ye between two opinions? If God be God, serve him. But if Baal be God, serve him. But you cannot serve Baal and God simultaneously because you are bound to be confused and distracted. We cannot serve God and Mammon. And so Elijah brought in Israel a mighty reformation. A mighty reformation. And the people turned back to God. And they were now faithful. Now, Jezebel sent out a challenge to Elijah. As a matter of fact, before I get there, when Elijah brought that great reformation, and at the end of it, he was about to descend the mountain. But he said to his servant before he came up the mountain, go and look over yonder and tell me what you see. The physical drought was about to break, and also the spiritual reformation. And so the servant came back, and for 7 times, that's God's perfect number, 7, Elijah said, go and look, go and look. And one of the time when the servant went to look, he said, I saw something that looks like a man's fist. Elijah knew what it meant. And the clouds started to dark up. Nimbus stratus, dark gray cloud indicating rain. And Elijah said to Ahab, get down off of the mountain quickly, lest the rain stop you. And as they started to descend the mountain, Ahab in his chariot, Elijah running on foot, running alongside. And when you think that they would have been happy because rain is now coming, plants can grow, animals can be kept alive now, they were not happy because Satan was angry now. So Jezebel, the evil wife of Ahab, sent a message to Elijah. Tomorrow, this time, 12:36. Tomorrow, this time, you shall be like one of those. You slow up there. No, remember, it was Elijah on top of the mountain, The same Elijah, having heard the message, he requested that God should take his life. You see, friends, what can we learn from that? There are times we are going to be on a mountaintop in our experience with God. And there are other times we're going to be what? In the valley. So the Christian's relationship is like what? A roller coaster. Up, down, up, down, up, down. And there's nobody in the Bible that you can ever reference and say they had a mountaintop experience every time. It's not true. Look at the great Moses. Look at the Apostle Paul. But you know something? Through all their experiences, whether they were on top of the mountain or in the valley, God was always with his people. And that can be one of the takeaways from what I'm saying to us, friends. We are living in difficult times where a lot of people are fearful. Fearful. But guess what? Let us continue to trust God. Because God is bigger than our fear. He's bigger. And God always provides. When I listened to the news this week, I said, at least, despite some of the foolishness taking place in this country, God has some good people out there still. I heard some people, some churches come up and say that they have pantries filled with food. So those who are, being affected, come and get food. Come and get food. And you can get clothes too. God provides. Because God is saying to his children that this is my problem, not your problem. I will work things out for you. As a matter of fact, let me ask you a question. If God was to entrust the problem in your hand, how would you propose to work it out? All you're going to do is fret it out. Fret or worry it out. But God says, trust me, I will take care of the problem for you. I say to my wife, you have your job long before Mr. Trump came into politics. Long time. And he will not take it away from you because God gave you the job. And hold God accountable. And it's not because the office that you work in is very important, but because God says, you are my child and I'm going to give you this job. And you'll keep it until you're ready to leave. It will not be taken from you. Then you might be saying that why is it others are losing their job? What is so special about me? Well, that's a good question and a reasonable one too. But the answer to that, God treats every case differently. Isn't that correct? God treats every case differently. Sister Pat might lose her job while Sister Yvette has hers or vice versa. And you might say, then how is it that it affects me this way? God might have something else for you that you don't know of. But he's simply saying, trust me. I know where I'm taking you to. He said to Joshua, be strong and be very courageous, Joshua. Trust me. And as long as you keep your eyes on me, you will be successful. And as we went to the story last night, I said, I have never read in the Bible or in the pen of inspiration any flaw about Joshua. When Joshua died, he was 110 years old. God used him for 30 years to straighten out the land for Israel. He died a faithful sentinel of God. Friends, it is now time to act for God. It's now time to stand up for God, even in these difficult times. God truly is good. Yes, God truly is good. And we can trust him, friends. Despite the distractions, despite what is going on around us, we can trust God because we know that we have a friend up in glory whose name is Jesus. You know what I've noticed about God? For those of us who have a relationship with God, God does something extra special for us. The man or the woman who has a relationship with God is going to get more than the sun and the rain. That is what everybody gets. God has some special provision that he only gives it to children, those who are willing to make sacrifices for his cause. It's never easy. It's not easy to have the last $1,000 in the bank. And the church has a need. And you say, Lord, you're impressing me to give. I'm going to give something. Lord, I have my 2 children to go to college. It's part of their tuition. This, I'm going to give it to you in faith. You think God is going to disappoint you? He will not disappoint you. You will never know, but doors are going to be open for you. And sometimes, the Sunday before the Monday, you don't see anywhere out. And you might begin to question, has God failed me? No, he has not. He's testing you. Watch this now. Monday morning comes. The children are about to go to school. You can either get a phone call or a knocking. Somebody just hand you an envelope. Sister Pat, I'm impressed to give this to you. When you open the envelope, 5,000. 5 times more than what you got. That's what God does. He gives you the extra blessing. Maybe if you did not give what you have, you wouldn't get it. But you learn to trust God. You learn to trust in God, and God will prove himself faithful to you. And that's what God wants us as his children to understand, to develop a relationship with him where we can trust him, Sister Campbell. He will come through for us. He might not come through when you want him to, but you can rest assured God's timing is not always man's timing. But man's extremity has always been God's opportunity. He will come through for us. So as we go through these difficult times, friends, I'm not going to keep you long, just giving a word of encouragement. As we go through these difficult times, do some introspection. Use the time to do some introspection. Use the time to do some missionary work and leave the word to the Lord, because the Lord knows he's going to work things out for you. You don't have to worry. God has it working, because Daniel chapter 4 tells us that God reigns in the affairs of men. And men are not at liberty to do what they want to do, but they can only do so much and no more as God will allow them to do. And friends, let me tell you something. The Bible talks about some very cruel leaders, you know. Talk about Manasseh, the most wicked and evil king who reigned in Israel. You talk about Ahab, Ahab doesn't come anywhere close to Manasseh. You talk about Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, who raided Jerusalem 3 times, took away good Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And when they took them to Babylon, Daniel was under his regime, but God came through for those boys. God came through. God provided and God promoted them, and they found favor with God. Daniel even served in the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians. That's the God we serve. When God has your back, you don't have to worry, friends. He will work things out for you. So guess what? As we go through the rest of this shutdown, or whatever there is, whatever you want to call it, for those of you who are impacted, let us remember that God is watching and God is going to come through for you. And even if you end up losing a job, it might just be that God has a better one for you. Okay? It might just be that God has a better one for you. But I just want to assure us, friends, just continue to trust the Lord. And if we can trust God, then certainly God will prove himself faithful to us. Because from experience, I know that God is consistently faithful. You notice I didn't say faithful. You know, I qualified, and I'm going to tell you why I qualified it. Because if somebody has been faithful and one time they prove unfaithful, then you could not say the person has been consistently faithful. That one time is going to affect the faithfulness. So God has always been consistently faithful, because there has never been a time that God has been unfaithful. Isn't that right? But we have been what? Unfaithful most of the time. Most of the time, by comparison. And God, despite our unfaithfulness, still demonstrates faithfulness to us. God is always holding up his side of the bargain, but most time we let down our side. But because he's God and he cannot do otherwise, he proved to be faithful. And God wants us to be faithful too, and to trust him. And when we trust God, friends, he will work things out in our favor. So just be faithful, be strong, be courageous, and you shall reap good success. Because it's not Brother Salmon that is saying so, but it's the God of just Joshua who is saying that. And if we can hold into his words, we will prove God true. God bless you. Thank you.